welcome back everyone. Let us now dive right into the last panel discussion for the day on a topic of prime importance, solving for employability and employment, the role of mentoring. This session looks at how mentoring can shape aspirations and soft skills and improve job retention to support millions of young people to enter and thrive in the workforce. I'm happy to welcome back Arundhati Gupta on stage to moderate this session and Professor Livia Alfonsi. I'm next delighted to welcome Nikita Bengani. Nikita has been working with Quest Alliance since its inception and has worn multiple hats through her career journey in areas including strategy, program design, government relations, learning experience design, fundraising, and technology for learning. She currently leads the youth skilling work that engages with large-scale government systems and network of civil society partners across the country. She also leads the Future Rights Skills Network, a policy think tank, and is deeply passionate about enabling career journeys for youth. A warm welcome to you, Nikita. I would like to next call upon Vaishali Samantha. Vaishali is the Chief Operating Officer at Vedas Foundation, a philanthropic foundation looking to solve large-scale challenges in India through evidence-based giving. She has over 2 decades of cross-sectoral experience spanning the government as well as the social impact space and is a strategic advisor for government partnerships. Previously, Vaishali has led the Ministry of External Affairs Diaspora Engagement Initiative to facilitate overseas Indian philanthropy into the government's priority areas. A warm welcome to you, Vaishali. I now call upon the last panelist for the day, Gudiya. Gudiya is the manager at GSMA Innovation Fund and facilitates collaborations with organizations across India to bridge the gender digital divide to improve women's livelihoods, economic security, and resilience. Previously, Gudiya was part of the strategy, planning and management team at the Gates Foundation, where she supported investments in gender equality, inclusive financial systems, digital and health innovation, and state systems and policy. She has also worked with the Ministry of Women and Child Development and global not-for-profit TechnoServe on women's economic empowerment initiatives. A warm welcome to you, Gudiya. Over to you, Arundhati, to lead the discussion.
Thank you. I think hosting events always feels like a culmination of so many things in the backstage that when it's all finally on stage, it feels a bit unreal, right? And I think when we were thinking of the closing panel of the first day of the Mentoring Summit, we thought about one of the big picture areas where we really think there is a scalable model for mentoring which could, in the decades to come, be something that is seen from a policy lens and evidence lens and have really some greater structure to it. And I think employability emerged from a lot of conversations that we were having, the natural traction that we were seeing come to the forefront in the last 3-4 years. And I think each of us has an interesting angle to that topic of how young people today are getting into jobs and staying in jobs, right? This is a topic that's, I think, always headline grabbing, right? In every which way, either young people are not having the skills, employers are complaining, people are leaving, women are out of the workforce. So there is never really a day when there isn't a headline about employability in the paper. And I think it reflects the top priorities of the country. I think one of the statistics or one of the things that struck us was when in 2024, in the Government of India budget, some of the biggest schemes with outlays in many thousands of crores were three around employability. Does anyone sort of remember, or any names come to mind around which were those schemes that in 2024 were all announced as some of these big policy measures to address issues of employability? I'm sorry? The PM internship scheme. Like Manisha said, I'm sorry, I don't have awards for right answers or wrong answers, but yes, that's right. One of them was the PM internship scheme. Right, at the state levels, there are lots of things happening. Anyone else, any other scheme that comes to mind from the central budget of 2024? There was also a huge outlay for the upgrade of ITIs.
That was this year, actually.
I think operationalized all this year, announced in the 2024 budget.
60,000 crores.
60,000 crores for the upgradation of over 5 years of industrial training institutions and skilling institutions. And then there was a third very interesting scheme which was called the Employment Linked Incentive, later renamed as the Pradhan Mantri Viksit Bharat Rozgar Yojana, which offered both employers and employees an incentive to both hire on the employer side and to stay in the job for the employee side, right? And I think that if you think of the range of these schemes, right, internships for those that are probably graduated but looking for work, upgradation of infrastructure at the institutional level, financial incentives to try and change behaviors at the employer, you really can see why this is an urgent priority, because we are really throwing in many ways a kitchen sink at the problem, trying to solve it in so many different ways, right? And that's where this panel brings the question together of what is the role of employability in this whole conversation and this movement of mentoring in this whole conversation and movement happening towards employability. And each of the four panelists have a very interesting lens to it. So hopefully from the experiences they'll share, we'll get a picture of what different actors are doing. I think I'll start with Livia first, because it was a question that was asked earlier as well, which is that often we have a sense of the problem, right? Here, young people find it difficult to graduate from education or skilling, get into jobs, stay in jobs. That's the problem, right? On one hand, then you have mentoring, which has an idea, everyone associates something with it, and it's presumed to be of value to this bigger problem. But the big question is how, right? What is that? Is it a black box? Like, why would it even work? What in the mechanisms of mentoring can impact labor market outcomes or labor market trajectories? And is there any evidence to it, or is it hypothetical? If you can tell us a little bit from your research.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thanks for the wonderful day and all the incredible panelists that have been up here today. I think just in the session right before, or the one before, you hinted at a study that I've been part of where we were able to run a randomized trial. A hard thing to do, but successfully we managed to pull that out, where we basically, what we did is we followed students, we randomized students into receiving a mentor at the end of their vocational education. So students were going through, this was in the context of Uganda, this is where the main study was done, where students would go through Tibet for 2 years. Vocational education, yeah. So students will learn for 2 years to be a plumber. Oh, somebody told me that in my this is completely an aside, but in my opening panel I said CPA, which I learned people did not know what that was. I think I just used a weird, that meant accountant. Anyways, this was a side piece. But anyway, so students would go through vocational education, learn skills, so the sort of the hard skills, and then a random subset of them, like 600 students, would receive a mentor and would be matched with mentors for one-on-one mentoring. And then the rest of around 400, another 600 students, 500-something students would not receive the mentors. And then we were able to follow the students for over 3 years, both during the school and then as they graduated and went into the labor market. And so followed them up to a year into the labor market to see the trajectory that they embarked in. And exactly to get at what Arundhati was saying, we didn't want to just see is this mentoring doing something or not, But we also wanted to try and understand a little more what is it? What is in this black box, like this magic that happens? Can we learn a little bit more about it? And so we ended up recording, we did a lot of things, and among them we managed to, because this was also online mentoring, exactly similar to Mentor to Go, record over 500 hours worth of conversations between the mentor and mentees, and then analyze these conversations. And then, of course, collected a lot of survey data on both sides. And so the long story short is that what we found was pretty surprising to me. I went into the project thinking the mentor is really going to be that person that's going to connect the youth to the job. Like, I really thought a little bit, before going in, I really thought of a mentor as a connector, more of a sponsor, or sort of like this is where the main traction is going to come from. And in fact, we didn't see a lot of that, which to me was surprising at the beginning, because there is obviously research that shows that in labor markets, having, knowing people, can be useful. Like, I think we can all agree on this. But what we were able to rule that out as the main sort of mechanisms that drove the great impacts that we saw. Maybe I should have opened with this. We did see incredible impacts. We saw 27%, 3 months after graduating, students that had the mentor were 27% less likely to have dropped out of the labor force and have either not being in jobs or not being even looking for jobs. So really I fell into like sort of a discouragement, where I call discouragement people that are now even maybe working in some casual occupations, making some small money, but doing nothing related to what they studied for 2 years. So way less, people with a mentor, way more likely to be working more days, and a year down the line, they're making 18% higher earnings, and in that year, they were significantly more likely to do the sort of the internship to job transition. So kind of really like do that career step, that really puts you on a better trajectory. And so when we unpack it, what we saw is that what really was happening is that students were coming in towards the end of their program with very, I would say, overly optimistic expectations about what they were going to find out there as their first thing, their first job. What we saw is that, and what the mentors reported and the conversation showed, was exactly this sort of misalignment between what we have been talking about, like their labor market conditions. This was in the context of urban Uganda, but conditions where the jobs that you have in mind and idolized as you have gone and put in the hard work, because that has to be recognized, like the hard work through the education, just were not corresponding with the jobs that were available out there. And so students would expect something better to step in right away, but the reality of it was that that was not there. This was also 2021, so I guess we still were after the pandemic, but unfortunately the pandemic didn't explain the whole of it. And so the mentors were really, really good at doing was kind of calibrating both the reality check of, being able to go to someone and, correcting a little bit the optimism, but at the same time not crushing their hope, because they were really able to link the fact that, yes, maybe the first job, the first internship, the first experiences are not going to be so great as you expected. You're not going to make as much as you thought you were going to make, but the trajectory is there. The returns to what you did are there. It's going to take a little bit longer than you expected to materialize. And this is something that I think this morning I was asked how much of this is generalizable to other places. And the more I think about this research, and the more now I'm at Harvard at the business school, where obviously it's a place where the students come through with very high expectations with what they're going to do after. It's a pretty expensive program, I would say, and obviously with a good history of placement, and this placement and the good history is still there. But labor markets change. The amount of people that have that qualification changes. And so sometimes the returns just takes longer to materialize than what you thought going in. And I think the mentors were just so key in passing the message without leading to hopes being crushed and students wanting to sort of drop out or going the other way. So I think I took more time.
No. And so did you end up you used a lot of very interesting unstructured data, which was hours of conversation, right? And did you end up putting it into a framework of sorts of this is what the mentors did in a functional way?
Yeah, so we had, this was even pre-specified even before starting the study. We had this sort of 4 categories of support. One was the one I was hinting at before, the sort of referrals, like network, like the mentor working as a facilitator. So in the calls we were really looking for, is the mentor connecting you to somebody? It's the mentor telling you about a specific job opening, giving you a phone number, like connecting you to a friend. The second one was the mentor as somebody who can help you with like search tips and like actionable, like here's how you go about looking for jobs, like here's how you write a CV. And we would see a lot of this, just to be clear, like we were able to see in the conversations, like mentors that would talk about do not use slang in interviews, speak in a certain way, dress in a certain way, etc., etc. So very practical tips on how to search. The third category is what we call information about entry-level conditions. So really just giving you the numbers. Like this is how much a person with your profile is likely gonna make. Like don't overestimate based on that one person you know who has found that unicorn job. This is how the distribution, that's how it looks like. These are the jobs, these are the tasks. Like really giving like a reality check. And I should have said the mentors were around 5 years older, so these were not like much older. These were, you know, a step ahead in their career and successful, established, but not far away, so far away that they didn't sort of recall. So this was the third group. And then the fourth group is what we called encouragement. So really like sticking to it, motivating, listening, motivating, supporting. And so I think the pairing of the information that's correcting the optimism with this encouragement and push to keep going is what ultimately from the conversations turn out to be the key to success.
So the biggest value of the mentor was in correcting informational asymmetry around the job market and providing the encouragement.
Right, because the correction was downward in a way.
Okay, got it. Helping them become more realistic, right? And because it was sometimes disappointing to hear, it was also then the encouragement.
In a way unfair, right?
Sure,
Because they had put in the work.
sure, sure.
So this has to be there.
And so interestingly, the referrals and also the last of the 4, the referrals were not so important, and also the effort of like advice for the interview process and other things. Sure, I think that we can all sort of relate to any of these contexts being necessary for the young people we work with, right? So I'm curious, like Nikita, if you had to think of your work with such a wide group of young people across TVET institutions, technical and vocational education across the country, what are y'all seeing in the work that y'all do as the gaps that you're thinking about mentoring to solve for?
I think I'm going to start with a personal story. I think for me, I think I was on the fence for the longest time, in terms of not having a formal mentor, and I feel like many years passed by like that. I would often hear people talk about their mentors, drop some big names saying, oh, this person is my mentor, and I'd be like, yeah, okay. So I feel like, for me, for the longest time, I didn't realize the value of having a mentor in life. Up until, I think, 2 years back, as part of the leadership team at Quest, we were all forced almost a leadership coach saying, you need it, take it. And still then some of us opted, some of us still like, oh, we don't have the time, let's not do this, there's too much happening. But I feel like when I actually opted for it, I realized what I was missing. The fact that there was somebody to sort of have conversations about me, while we have partners, we have siblings, we have family, we have friends, we have colleagues. But everybody has a lot going on in their lives. But the fact that somebody was interested in helping me just felt so special, right? So for me, like, that feeling was so good. And I feel like it changed a lot of my perspective in life in general in terms of what a good mentor can become. And I think it also brought a lot of gratitude for me for all the people who are like the invisible mentors who I didn't formally think were my mentors, but I was having chats with, which helped me create that support system that I needed to go to when I needed. I think a lot of gratitude also sort of surfaced for me, right? And this is me, and I read a statistic outside where it said 63% of women still don't have a formal mentor, right? So I was thinking about this statement, and this is me, who's so-called a privileged person, who has access to a lot more things than most of the others. And I was then thinking in my head, like, if this is what I felt the gap was, what about the young people, who come from all kinds of backgrounds, right? And just to put a little bit of context of what I'm trying to say, like, we're talking about a country which has the youngest and the largest workforce. We have, 140 crore people in this country, of which a good 25% is young people, which almost translates to 38 crore young people. Of these 38 crore young people, almost 1.2 crore young people are entering into the world of work every single year, right? So I just wanted to set this context of who we are talking about. And then we're talking about a world of work which is shifting like it's never shifted before, right? The pace of change is fastest than ever before, right? With AI, climate, population, all of the things that everybody keeps talking about and the headlines are being made, right? And how do we think these young people are feeling in this day and age where world of work is shifting? We don't know what we are studying. Is there going to be a job that is going to be relevant? What jobs are going to be there in the future? We don't know that today, and hence we can't train for it today. Climate change is causing so much of migration and movements, right? So this is the context, and there is so much of chaos in these young people's life, right? And we as people who work in the space of skilling, and trying to see how do we find a way to help these young people gather skills so they can meaningfully transition into some kind of world of work. But there are still so many gaps, which kind of keep coming back, right? Right at the outset, there are just so many careers to choose from today. And do our young people even have information of what is out there? We don't have any formal process of career exploration, career decision making to say, this is what the possibilities are, these are your interests and abilities, maybe this is what you could choose to make a career in. They end up joining courses and trades based on somebody told them so join it, right? So that's where the first gap lies, where the information about career decision making, there's literally nobody to help them because there is no formal processes right now in the system. That's number one. Number two, somehow this person has made a choice, entered some kind of a vocational institution, government, private, whatever else, right? The second big problem is, what do I study, right? Even though we have apps, we have an employability skills curriculum, we work with government systems, we also work with private NGOs, which tells them that, okay, based on, what you want to become, what your skills are, here's what you can study. But you realize that every single person is so different from the other, right? Sometimes when you're trying to design programs for scale, we forget that every single person is different. We make this one big homogeneous picture of a young person, and we feel that, yeah, we can have courses and programs and run this at scale, right? So this madness of scale also forgets a lot of the depth and the quality and the personalization. So I'm not sure if, the programs that we all design at all times, and I don't even know if we have the liberty to design it for every single person, but their needs are actually very different. And teachers don't have the time to pay that attention to that every person based on their needs. So that's the second gap in how things function today. The third gap is, chalo, they've studied something, they've managed to figure something out. Now it's a time to transition, right? Now they have multiple career pathways. I can go start a business, I can get into a job, I can get into an apprenticeship. So one, how do I decide? Secondly, even if I then manage to get into a job or start a business, how do I sustain it? We have so many young people who are migrating for jobs because they don't have jobs in the local areas. We have so many young people who need support after they've joined the workplaces because they don't know how to get, so even if theoretically we teach them how to get ready for work, these are your lessons, these are the scenarios, go visit the industry, but when you're actually working, the struggles you have, the emotional upheaval that you go through sometimes is hard, and they don't know who to go to. They're in a new space. They don't often feel that they can go to their families, right? Somebody who's starting a business, right? I'm sitting in Nagaland trying to open a piggery, for example. I'm in a remote space. That's probably the only thing I can do. But I know theoretically, business plan-wise, this is what I need to do. I need to think about marketing, sales, whatever, right? But when I'm actually doing it, do I have somebody to go back to ask the hard questions, somebody who's done this before me, to tell me what it is, right? So this is really where the fourth gap lies, right? So we spoke about, career exploration, decision-making, to actually thinking about what to learn, to then how do I transition, to once I've transitioned, how do I sustain, and who answers my question? And while theoretically programs have all of these things figured, but I also realize that this, the way that programs are designed today, they're not necessarily helping our young people find answers to all of this. And I really feel here is where the role of a mentor across this journey becomes supremely critical because, they really need that personalized support based on the context they're in, the problem they're facing, and what they really need.
Right. And it points to the fact that, yes, despite all these efforts, some of these issues of employability have continued happening. I remember when Mentor Together had a recent MOU with the Ministry of Labor and Employment, which is one of the originators of one of these 5 schemes, right, or 3 schemes, right, which is the employment-linked incentive. And when we were talking to the secretary and saying that why is the goal? You're giving the employer an incentive to hire, you're giving the employee an incentive to stay on. Why would you want mentoring on top of that? And they said, look, our data says that even if we do all of this, we don't expect half the people to reach the 6-month mark, because this isn't an issue of needing financial incentive to stay. This is a coping issue. This is an adjustment issue. These are all the things that only human support can support, right? So it's a very interesting thing that though it's such a massive scale of problem, we have to think at a very personalized level, which can also be daunting. So no, thank you so much, Nikita, for sharing that. And Vaishali, Vedis has this very interesting point, and you should know that that Viji, who was in the quality session, spoke a lot about how Aspire works, and Vedis was the seed funder to Aspire to take innovations and evidence programs to scale with government. So you all have this unique vantage point of really working closely with government to both see what their priorities are, what are they trying to solve for, and then also seeing the rest of the space to see what can be brought to them. So in all the conversations you all are having or working with government, what are you all seeing as the appetite or the need that they see? They are often running these institutions, starting these policies and schemes. So especially at the state level, where are you seeing the need and appetite from the government side for mentoring?
So I think, I think never before have we seen the pressure that governments are currently under to demonstrate outcomes. So this is also a very opportune moment. And I heard in some of the previous session of mentoring coming in as a layering, because it won't come in itself to solve for a problem. But I'll take a step back, and maybe I'll give a context of all my observations coming in. And the latest that we are doing is an initiative called Samanvay, where we are trying to get in governments and NGOs to be equal partners towards impactful change. By equal partners, I'm underlining the word equal. So we are trying to get in governments to really, and we've seen that opportunity that has come from governments where they identify, they actually introspect, they identify, they figure out, where the challenges are, they acknowledge that there are gaps, and they're ready to partner. So there starts the first step that, yes, I lack something and I need it, which also makes the conversation, governments have become increasingly intentional about their needs. So, which is a great thing because they value the support they're getting. And I always say that governments will get in the scale, but they'll never have the flexibility for innovation and agility that partners outside bring to the government. So it's actually a marriage which is, I think, quite opportune at this point of time. So through the Samanvay initiative, what we are trying to do is, and our first partner state is actually the state of Uttar Pradesh, where even we are trying to see how government gets in to articulate and exactly identify the needs, not just talk in very vague terms of, I want help. That's not what it is, but exactly what do you need help in. And I want to repeat it, but it's actually what Nikita said, so which is great, that for one of the departments, which was vocational education and skilling, the need was that we need mentoring and counseling support, pre-registration. This came from the vocational education, so it was for ITIs. We need it pre-registration, we need it while they are in it, we need career counseling, and we need post-mentoring support, placement support, and to look at, retention, which means conversion from being an apprenticeship to an employee. So I think it is that whole continuum of support which you touched upon earlier, is that whole continuum of support. So, she's coming in from the doer side, I'm coming in totally from the government's angle, and without us having spoken to each other, I think that's the atmosphere we are talking about. So here, I think the appetite for the government, and we are trying to, for Samanvay, we are trying to get in NGOs which fit into that need. And because of our partnership with the government, we are trying to facilitate I would say, or facilitate a more enabling environment for NGOs to get in and work with the government. So in which for skilling, mentoring is a big ask. So when they talk about a big ask, I think there are a couple of things, right? A couple of things which means that one is that the need is structural. And government has large skilling programs. We all know that they have large skilling programs. But the need is that governments are increasingly asking question what's happening to these young people? What's happening when they get into interviews? What's happening when they go from interviews? Why are they taking the decisions that they are taking? Why are they falling off? And how do I help them? So, where the need is very structural in terms of the second bit of it is frontline. There is no frontline support. I think many panels touched upon that point, that the last mile support, the district officials, the trainers, instructors who are there at these various vocational education centers, they do not have the tools, the time, or the ability to give personalized guidance. And here I'm talking about personalized because skilling, I really believe skilling and mentoring is deeply human. It is human to human. And the third is that whole bit about governments wanting to focus on youth transition. We are talking about India becoming a $5 trillion economy. If we are going to be anywhere, UP talking about a $1 trillion, openly on the stage, I'm not going to talk about anything, but if we are going to reach $1 trillion, it's going to take a lot of time, and government has to invest in its youth. So where is that youth transition happening? And it's therefore that mentoring brings in a beautiful layer of, are these people getting that confidence? Are these people being able to, navigate opportunities? Are they being able to make informed decisions?
Right.
And
I want to point out the incredible synergies, like you said, Vaishali, that you had with Nikita. And 2 days ago, I asked Livia that you're an economist, and I rarely come across economists studying mentoring. So how did you end up studying mentoring? Because though we've been collaborators, I had never asked her that question. And she told me an answer very similar to what you said, which was she was studying in ITIs the traditional approaches to supporting young people and trying to measure their efficacy, and realized at the end of it that they just need more, right? And there was not, that was doing its part, but they needed more. And that is how this entire her journey into becoming a mentoring researcher itself came to be. So I think it's incredible that I think we're not fighting the fact of we need it. And the different institutions are also coming to the table accepting it, right? Which is very interesting. I think, Guria, there's an interesting angle to this also. We've been talking a lot institutional, and I think the TVET space has come up. But we also know that India's broader issue of employability is one that's deeply gendered, right? It's if at any point we're losing people and the people who are falling out of the workforce, it's more women, right? Or not entering the workforce, all of that is largely women. And from the perspective of the GSMA Innovation Fund, you all do a lot of interesting research that's trying to understand the role that digital has to play in this. And we'll talk later about how digital and mentoring sort of go together, but I'm curious what y'all are seeing as the barriers to employability, especially for women and digital, and what are some of those things y'all are trying to solve for, you think the field has to solve for to improve employability conditions?
Yeah. Thank you, Arundhati, for that question. So, I'll start by quoting some stats from the GSMA Mobile Gender Gap Report, and for people who don't know, it's basically an annual industry study that the GSMA does across India and the other LMICs to see how men and women differ in mobile use and access and ownership. So the current stats, and I'm only going to go into India itself, says that only about 37% of women actively use mobile internet, and women are 33% less likely than men to be online even when they have internet-enabled devices. And if I look at across, and there is obviously elements of intersectionality into it. If you are between urban and rural, even if the ownership remains the same, how does the usage is like, the usage gap between rural and urban is 37 to 51, even amongst women. So there is intersectionality within that. And if I look at LMICs at large, there's still like...
What's an LMIC?
Sorry, low and medium income countries overall, there are still 885 million women who are still unconnected. So that's a huge gap in the digital space it is there, and in India in particular. And why do I say in India in particular? Because India has become this country where mobile phone basically, or internet enabled devices, have basically become a gateway to everything. So you want learning platforms, you want job platforms, you want financial services, you want access to gig opportunities, you want basic exposure to career opportunities, including mentoring for that matter. Everything has come with the access and use of internet. And when women, and we've kind of seen three persistent barriers, particularly in India, that have been emerging, at least in the last 3 years, in the report, which have been: A, affordability. An entry-level smartphone for a woman is still 1/3 of the entire household income, which again, by default, if they have to spend, the spending goes on the male member of the family. The second one, on digital literacy. By default, this entire thing of confidence, about how they are getting skilled, itself makes women kind of slightly behind on how they are uptaking digital skills, even if they are imparted to them. And the last one is safety. There is a lot of tech facilitated gender based violence that particularly happens with women. And it could be in form of harassment, misuse of phone, and again, that is very much linked to the social norms that happens at home on providing basic access to phone or other internet enabled devices. And this, we have been seeing, is kind of the biggest barrier to employability and employment, because when you put a plethora of opportunities on a platform, and that platform, the gateways to that platform itself is very inaccessible to 50% of the population, then you are saying that they can't get it.
Right.
So I think that's what has been like our observation to digital being like not facilitating, in fact,
Yes.
employability and
And
employment.
I think it's a bit sobering. I'm sure all of us have again heard that there's only a rising of all of this, right? Increasing internet, increasing smartphone usage. And I think the challenges are very real, like you're saying, right? If you're 33% less likely, and like you're saying, on the supply side, it seems like all of this information, jobs, opportunities have all moved to these platforms. And then we haven't solved for a big portion, the people who need it, there's a bigger barrier in the middle, right? And I think that's a very sobering thing for all of us that are actively thinking of digital as well as a way to increase access. So it feels like we've gotten a really good sense of a different sets of challenges that we've seen, right? At the institution level, what government is recognizing, what research has found as the impact of mentoring and the role of digital. Before we move into the space of talking about like the approach, the solutions, right? How could we really make a difference to all of this, and what's the future going to look like in a practical way if we had to bring mentoring to scale? I'm just curious to see if there are any questions. And oh wow, a hand went up so quickly. Yes, please.
I want to thank you for bringing this topic today, because for past 10 years I've been researching this and implementing this
Please
for
introduce
1,000
yourself.
people. So I'm Saloni Jain. I founded my organization called Celebrating Careers. The goal is that everybody should be happy about their careers. Why not? You mentioned a lot of reason. And while I was doing a career which I didn't like, it took me a lot of resistance to break out of it, find people myself, and solve that problem for other people. So for past 8 years, I've helped more than 1,000 people in this hyper-personalized career journey, who maybe started with me in class 8 and today they are in like Barclays, still discussing career issues with me, because it's a journey.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
And I'm so happy today that somebody is at least talking about it. In the past month, I've gone to Skill Summit, Mental Health Summit, this summit, and everybody's talking about finding the ikigai. Half of the people here are still finding their purpose. Right?
Right.
So solving this problem has to be very grassroots. I've done
Yes.
it at a micro level, and I know at the macro level there has to be a lot of structural change.
Right.
Where this thought came to me was when 10 years back I saw a show from Oprah where she was talking about why people are happy in Denmark. So people are happy in Denmark because employment is like they are giving 3 years of pay to find what you want to do.
Right.
They're giving you free education, and they're giving you all access to all the basic infrastructure so that you do at least what you really like to do, so that you don't waste our energy and resources. And that's what helped me found my solution on how I can help people. So today I literally like to pitch in. If you need my help, I'm there to contribute all my research to all you guys and bring this structural change in India, because that's my vision and mission. And I'm so happy, seriously,
Thank you,
that you
sir.
are working on this
You don't have to
direction.
go to the next summit.
Yeah, I hope.
Great. A question from from Abhishek. Yes.
My question is for Livia, and that's amazing study, and it's sort of connecting the dot with the graduate unemployment in the country. So if you're a graduate, it's 10x more likelihood to be unemployed or than compared to be sort of like if you're a school dropout or something. And probably because the reason we set up the right goal setting or optimization of expectation. So as an economist, as a researcher, and to solve this the employment problem in India, what do you think would be an appropriate age to have an intervention, mentoring intervention for goal setting or right expectation matching? So that because the sunk cost, like these 3 years in graduation, then waiting for jobs, it's really high.
Should I answer?
Statistic that did you all get the part that Abhishek was saying that almost like there is no return to studying further sometimes in terms of it especially if college graduates face higher unemployment rates than others, largely because perhaps the expectation. So and Livia spoke a little bit about that, but overall it feels like if we're telling young people college and other levels are good for them, sometimes the market doesn't tell them that there is a return to them investing in all of this. So yeah, that's an interesting.
No, that's a great question. I would say, so two things to that. First, I think we need to be careful when we say there is no return versus the return is not what you expect, huh? Because is it 0 or is it maybe you expected 30 and it's 10, right? So I think the claim I'm making, at least in the context I've looked at, is the return is still positive. It might not be as much as, when the return is positive, it means it was better for you to do versus not, right? The kind of now I'm simplifying. But maybe you thought it was 30 and it's 10, so it's still disappointing. Now, where I wanted to go with this is, now I forgot my train of thought because I started from another piece. So yes, when to do this. So there's actually a study in India, 2 studies that, it's again with TVET, but I'll connect to it because I think it's really related, where there was basically, this was no mentoring, it was just a pure information treatment that was given to like students that were just at the beginning of their TVET journey, of their program. And the information was very much in line to what I was saying earlier. Let us really make sure that the expectations are aligned, and we do the goal setting by also providing information about what is realistic out there. And this was done very early in the program, and they saw massive dropouts. So people were like, okay, if this is what is out there right away, then I'm not even going to go into this. Now, if we go back to the fact that the 10 is better than 0, that's not ideal. That's not what you want. So I think 2 things to say to that. First, you always want to make sure that, and I think that's why mentors can be really good at that mentors can be helpful and say, okay, maybe the return is 10, it's not 0, it's not 30, it's 10 at the beginning, but look at, mentors sometimes also are, 3D real person that's telling you something that makes it more credible than a piece of paper if I tell you, look, yes, it was hard, the trajectory, but now I got here. So whenever you're doing it, especially if you're doing it at the beginning of a program, this goal setting, this like readjustment, make sure that you're not just giving the immediate, like, okay, this is how it's going to be, but like, this is how it's going to be, the whole trajectory, huh? And then if you do it early on, which I think is, I'm not going to say it's advisable or not advisable. I think the key, it's not really when you do it, but just providing the full picture. I think that's more where the key piece should be. I would say if you can do it early on, it's better, but the risk is that then that could kill a little bit the excitement and the motivation to maybe engage in a program. So it's really this like balance between correcting, doing the goal setting, and then sticking to it. And I think, again, the mentors can really stick with you throughout. Like in my study, what I saw, and this connects beautifully to things that were said today, is that we only organized as part of the program 3 long, but just 3 meetings. And then we saw that for 44% of the group, so not everybody, but 44% a year down the line are still in that mentorship relationship. And those are the ones that were more likely to do the transition into job, that were really like showing the benefits throughout the year. So I think that is more key, that whether you do it really at the beginning, halfway, or at the end, I think it's just doing it well with somebody who can then accompany you. I think that's...
So that broader sense of how does a career shape up over a longer period, right? And even if it doesn't now, is there a return to stick out for? And a more credible messenger telling you can often help convince you, right? Great, great. Any other question? Oh, wow, so many. I think we should take more questions, right?
My name is Nilesh, and I just wanted to pick up your thoughts specifically around it. What could be the stickiness element when it comes to the rural mentorship? And specifically, I'm asking from a rural perspective, because multiple studies like periodical labor studies and the need category, a lot of underemployment and seasonal employment issues comes up. How we can actually envisage that there is a ROI getting generated for employer as well as for the employee, and longevity of jobs can be enhanced in a longer run, so that many people can come into that and then they can get a benefit. So specifically, Livia or maybe Nikita, if you can answer this.
Livia or?
Maybe Nikita.
I mean, I'm definitely not an expert on rural mentorship, so maybe I can share some perspective, but maybe Olivia can talk about it more. But I feel like, some of the work that we do with young people who are from across the country, I do feel that context really plays out a lot of role for stickiness to happen, right? Oftentimes, like what I said, that it's hard when you're trying to work at scale to really contextualize, personalize things for different kind of young people who are coming. But there's so much of intersectionality, right? You talk about a young person, urban, rural is a very broad categorization. Even within rural, there are differences based on religion, there are differences based on caste, there are differences based on age, there is differences based on livelihood, where you live. So there are thousands and thousands of parameters which have an impact on who this young person is and what their needs are. And I do feel that the more relatable a role model or a mentor can be, because oftentimes, and even as a person who's, like I said, far more privileged and has access, oftentimes when I go to these trainings, conversations, I often feel, I know this, I'm not learning anything new. But what really sticks is when I realize that, I'm able to use this information, contextualize it in my context, use it, and really apply it, right? So I feel like when that connect happens with the mentor, where they understand your needs, or understand your context, and are really able to guide and have conversations from that perspective, and hence I think the need to find local mentors and local role models becomes really, really critical, as opposed to having a very generic set to draw from. I mean, that's one thing that I've seen as part of our work that really works, but happy to see if you want to add, or anybody else wants to add more.
We can take.
Hello. Yeah, this is Praveen here. And my question is regarding, how panel looks, can they share a thought and a little bit, right now and in the futuristic story, because we are in the age of this new tech as such, basically agentic AI and all ML and all those things we are talking about. So in the context of mentoring, because as Gunjur, I take that earlier panel, Gunjur was talking about most of the things are now, and the human will get more time on the other things rather than all the redundant tasks will be taken by technology as well. So in that context, how mentoring will look like, and that day is not far away, based on the current predictions, right? So how this mentoring spectrum will look like in the future? That is point number one. And point number two is from the impact and cost and all those parameters, how we are going to quantify or measure, because today itself we are not able to quantify, especially intangible aspect of it. Tangible, of course, you have some sort of matrix, right? So how the intangible aspect, because it's more on the intangible way as you move forward, right? Based on the current pace we are, and that is changes fast.
Right.
And third aspect is sorry, that very nice question she said about the Denmark example, right? These two things, how you look from the Denmark's, from that angle, because India, we cannot afford 3 years and that kind of a thing, and we are not able to digest today's change as such, especially we are talking the what you call a young, our this thing, all students and even this thing. So in the Denmark case, how we are going to visualize and how we are built our system that was, which will cope up, and that is like the thing that talking about 3 years to 5 years. It's not far away.
Sure.
So that's all. Over to you. Thank you.
Sure. I think that we could take the question. Is there just one more question? Yeah, we'll just, there are two more. Okay, we'll take the last two questions and then, yes, so.
Yeah,
there are three questions, okay.
Hi,
Yes.
I'm Deepesh, and this question is for Nikita. If I have to sum up the employability situation in India and the job market in India, I will use the satire by Kumar Vishwas in my own native language. He says, लोगों के पास काम नहीं है, काम के लिए लोग नहीं है, और जो काम कर रहे हैं वो किसी काम के नहीं है. That means people don't have jobs. Those who are jobs are not doing well, and companies are searching for people and they are not able to offer the jobs. So if this is the situation, do you think that, and you talked about the three issues which you talked about, do you think that just skill development is going to help us, or is it a character development, a better way to look at how we can address the employability, and that can happen through mentoring?
Right. I think that we'll maybe just hold, because we're...
Sorry, I just would like to just take on this, just thought I can't stop myself.
No,
So
look, someone else didn't get someone's raising their hand valiantly.
Yeah, just this, basically what is the training versus the mentoring
Yes,
as such. So
absolutely.
life skill will have a more impact actually, so that has to be counted.
Absolutely. I think the panel is convinced on that.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to dispute any of that. Yeah, thank you. With Gurya's point also, there's always been the gender divide, and technology is enhancing this gender divide even the more. So in that case, with Vaishali on the panel, how are we systemically voicing this opinion? Because the last panel, she beautifully talked about raising the voices to make the government feel that there's this need to bridge this gap. So with also Arundhati on the panel with working in Karnataka, how are you, are we talking for the girls or the young adolescent girls in the state, voicing for that, bridging the need? So how are we looking at it?
I have to acknowledge now I have not made any notes, so I'm keeping track of the questions. We'll just make sure we answer a few. So I'm thinking if just combining a couple of things, aligning with some closing thoughts also. Okay, last. And we're taking more questions from gentlemen to make up for our the lack of more of you
very brief question.
Diversity on the panel.
Hi, I'm Sunil. I'm working as a resident mentor in a university in Bangalore. My question is, how can mentors themselves evolve and grow in their mentorship journey, especially when you're mentoring more mentees at the same time? Like my university has over 2,000 students.
Right.
So how do we evolve in our journey?
Sure. Okay, let me have a go at asking each of you to address one point in closing thoughts, so to speak. So, Gurya, if you could speak to the design of, I'll summarize a couple of things and then each person take that. I think, Gurya, if you could speak to the design of technology, how is it changing with AI? When you were at the Gates Foundation, you all made a lot of investments in nonprofits to see what were the use cases of AI emerging. So if you could speak a little bit to that. Vaishali, if you could speak a little bit to this nuts and bolts of getting government to work, or working with government, but getting it to respond to the needs, right? That was one of the questions of that. And it often seems like such a difficult thing. And for Mentor Together, we've been on a couple of these new big government partnerships, and we've seen that figuring them out itself takes time. So in this case, what would you advise in a couple of those? Nikita, I wonder if you want to take the question about just the broader focus on mentoring versus skilling. Is there a shift or a balance, do you think, that's going to happen in the overall focus of how these programs are designed? And Livia, your pick. What do you want to... Oh, Denmark. I can talk about measuring intangibles. Yes, go for it, guys.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, alongside talking about the evolution of AI and agentic AI, if I can also speak a little bit about, like, just to make people aware of the design principles that need to kind of be there, because I feel that would be incomplete if I don't provide that. So I'll just take a minute on that. So yes, we are living in a system that's increasingly, particularly the youth, dependence on AI is increasing, and it's not just increasing from an information seeking perspective, but from an emotional perspective, from getting like, readied answers. And there is this entire like, the day is not far when you might get an agentic AI for mentorship. The problem with that is that uh, it's how sensitively has it been developed. If you ask a question currently, if a student today goes ask a question to an agentic AI, there is no way he or she can go back and check if the response is correct or not. And that's the same thing that is happening when they're doing their assignments these days in the education space. There is no factual checking that happens. We know about the hallucinations that the ChatGPT LLM models are doing. So the point that I'm trying to make is that we have to bring in, as earlier panels have been showing, the human element into now building. If at all we have to build large scale AI models, into sensitizing it more, because ultimately it's like the onus has to be on the developers. And I mean, as earlier also, I think one of the conversations previously with Arundhati and I were discussing, I think the next set of scams on the online space are going to happen in the area of knowledge, and not in the area of financial fraud, because there is no way you can check it. Like, the knowledge is just going to be out there, and you're going to get scammed on what you're trying to search and what it's providing you. So, and just to take up on that, and particularly in the area of how women, like, acknowledgement that women and girls definitely need different design principles when it comes to designing for digital, and particularly, say, for digital mentorship. And I want to speak to like couple of design principles that need to be there to intentionally build for some of those things. So one, you have to build in models that are low tech access models, which work on WhatsApp, which work on IVRs, etc. You have to look at the human centered design. You have to look at simple navigation. You have to look at language as a barrier. And I think earlier when we had, I don't recall the name of the BCG mentor, Rahul, who was there, he was talking about that how he's looking at language as such a big barrier, even though he's been mentoring for 8 years. So yes, if at all things transition to digital, you have to look at local language integration into it. You have to look at safety and privacy by design. Young women do not feel comfortable in participating in digital spaces. So how do you create that? Do you have verified mentors? Are you designing for anonymity? So these are the things that need to be taken care of as we move into, as you said, a more technology heavy, a more technology advanced kind of space, even when it comes to digital mentorship. Because we are going to see models when people would try to replicate agentic AI for mentorship. I'm like pretty sure of that. But we have to see how sensitively it's being designed. Particularly, I want to again emphasize the safety aspect of it, because again, year on year, we are seeing that top priority for young girls in particularly to not participate in the digital economy is the threat around how they are being perceived online. So, yeah.
I mean, I agree to a lot of what Guria said, but I also want to say this, that, increasingly we're also reading a lot about how, like, these digital bots are also becoming young people's, like, most, easy to go to, like, emotional confidants, right? Because I think this whole fear of judgments of when I say things as they are, how will the world react? Will they accept me for who I am? Will I feel judged? So I feel like that's also when people resort to a lot of technology to talk about things. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's definitely a trend that some of us are seeing. And I feel like there is going to be a role, whether we like it or not. How do we make it better? I guess that's where we can pay some energies on. But coming back to the question you asked me around, like, is doing skill development programs enough, or we need to look at more than that. I definitely feel that skill development programs over a period of time have started to become a lot more intersectional. I think oftentimes even in the NGO sector, we are very, like, we also tend to segregate, like, I'm working in health, I'm working in environment, I'm working in skills, I'm working in education. But I feel like each one of them have such a huge impact on the other. So I think the programs have to be looked at a lot more holistically, and some of that shift has started happening. It's not like people are not thinking about mental well-being at home. People are not thinking about the impact of climate change on young people, and hence what is the impact it's going to have on skilling and education. It's not like people are not thinking about how the advancement in technology and automation is going to impact skilling. Right? So there is a lot of this interconnections being spoken about. And I also feel like, and this is a conversation I was having with Arundhati as part of this panel conversations also, right? I feel like sometimes we also think of mentoring as one way to provide some scaffolding to young person in terms of making decisions, right? But I feel like if you look at it in a much broader way, right? A good mentoring process can do so much to young person in terms of their identity, in case of women, a sense of equity when you start to have more information, access, awareness, to what it does to your relationships, your confidence, right? So there's so much more beyond that one can look at a young person's level. The moment I talk about the role of mentoring for a skilling institute, right? Oftentimes our skilling institutes are very, very constrained with resources because they're trying to literally work with so many young people, cater to the needs every day. They're always short on teachers. The teachers are not fully trained because they're they have enough things going on. They don't have time to go for professional development programs. And I feel like a lot of these mentors could then serve as an extended set of support systems, which then takes the burden off the teachers to be able to have answers for every single thing, and for institutions to have an extended systems to really drive on. And I feel like from an institutional perspective, it's not just having mentors for young people. Even the mentors for teachers, mentors for principals can go such a long way, right? The fact, and even the whole idea of peer mentoring, right? Can I go to a fellow teacher or a fellow principal to talk about the same struggles that I'm having, he or she may be having, but he may or she may have figured an answer, right? So we don't talk about that. Mentoring is also spoken about a little bit at the pedestal. Somebody needs to have all the answers, only is that the person I need to speak to, right? And I feel like, hence at a systems level also, when mentors engage with young people on various conversations, the amount of knowledge, information we are drawing from that conversation, the richness it brings, and how that data then feeds back in designing these programs, so that they can become a lot richer. So I feel like it has an implication at a young person level, at an institute level, and even at a systems level. And this is what then enhances the richness. So it's not just a skill development program that will solve the problem, but when these programs become more intersectional, it becomes, and when mentoring is also looked at more broadly across individual institutional systems, I think that's when the change happens. And I think it's happening to some extent, but we still have a long way to go.
So Vaishali, the question is really around getting government to realize some of these challenges, or even taking some of these ideas, the practical day-to-day of working with government. What's the best practices and tips?
Yeah, because I think the mentoring aspect is purely, it's a scale and personalization aspect. So governments, being the regulators and the providers, have scale and they have reach. And I think partners who are there in the space come up with a very bottoms-up, insightful, incisive, personalization and insights that they bring. So I think when you build it into government systems and when you work with the government system, specifically to your question, I think we have to look at it as not something that we are bringing to the government, but something we are co-creating with the government. So which means that start with the government, start small. Government believes in its own evidence. We have to accept it. So, and every citizen is a citizen, right? So you can take the pilot. The co-creation part comes, where do I take the pilot from? Kind of governments have more insights on that. They've got years and years behind it. So, start with a small pilot, get the insights in. After the insights, I think what we firmly believe in is state capacities. And I think the panel touched upon it. How do you really improve? I won't say really change, but improve state capacities, which means that when you're putting a mentoring layer, you put it within the existing workflow. because it cannot be an added activity for everybody from the center till the district to be working on it. Nobody will. So how do you weave it into the existing workflow? You have data to capture. Who captures the data? How frequently does he or she have the time to capture that data? Or how can you, possibly capture 2 and not 10 things that you want to do and bring insights out of those 2? That's the other. And I think the more important layer is also the bit about, the phygital model. Because mentoring, I think, will largely be talking about personalization, but it needs to be a physical plus digital. So while, and I think Nikita talked about it, that even not only for students, but also to instructors, trainers, so they're or CDPOs and ITIs, whatever, whoever it is, placement officers. So when you're talking about mentoring, one is mentoring directly. The second is also the physical touch points. It's very important that you involve everybody in the ecosystem and not a one-to-one connect, because everybody needs to create that environment for that mentor-mentee relationship. And I think most important is the exit strategy. How are you thinking of the government taking it on? Which means, and I've been having this conversation increasingly from day one, where do you think it's going to reflect in their line item budget? It's very important. I mean, it's a very important conversation to have. And therefore, you design your program in such a way that ultimately the government will come. The government won't talk about, let's say, a government won't talk about an incentive strategy today. But maybe 5 years down they will, but maybe a lower hanging fruit for you would be actually unlocking the fund for training. So you don't contain the master trainers, you do it on behalf of the government for them to bring it in. I'll catch you up.
Okay, I have 1 minute, 3 points. Okay, so for the measure intangible, I would say you can come talk to me, I'll be around. I would say, no, because I want to say it's true that mentoring operates through many things, and it's daunting as somebody who, most of my day I spend it thinking about what data to collect and how to design questionnaires. It is daunting and it's hard, but I don't think that should prevent us from measuring. A lot of things can be measured, or at least we can go a step, like mental health. Like there are ways to measure the intangibles. Maybe not perfect, but that shouldn't prevent us from taking some steps. For Denmark, I was going to say Denmark does not have 1.4 billion people, and all of those, yeah. No, I mean, jokes aside, I think a learning point would be, yes, it would be ideal to have the 3 years. Many places, I would say most places, I mean, I come from Italy, we definitely don't have the 3 years, we don't have jobs at all. But all to say that is ideal, but I think thinking through how we can have those 3 years of thinking, still instilling the idea that you're chasing your career, all while the reality of things is you will have to be doing something else. You're not going to be paid by somebody. But I think still the instilling the learning in those 3 years and keep exploring should be there. And then how can mentors evolve as they're doing it? I think we said that. I'll just reiterate, just listen. I mean, learning from Gen Z, learning from your mentees. As you keep mentoring, you're also learning. We talked about reverse mentoring, reverse learning. So just like listening, not just for the sake of being a good mentor for that current mentee, but also from, learning and improving as you go in your mentor career or mentor trajectory. So yeah, I think I'm done.
Yes, and actually that's a very real question that in tomorrow's workshops we'll deal with, which is people who've mentored for very long, thinking about their skills, and then a set of coaches and others talking about should we really start certifying and building a more formal way for mentors to learn and grow. And so with that, I think we come to the close of day 1 of the Mentoring Summit. If we could just bring up the last slide, that I think the conversation really just captures, I think, something that Mentor Together has been very excited to do, which is that from the last summit and this year, we've really felt that this is a community of practice that cares about mentoring, right? Whether it's a researcher coming all the way from Harvard Business School, philanthropic foundations that are deeply thinking about mentoring and taking it to governments, other nonprofits that have large-scale activities and their own specializations, but willing to experiment and think about it, or philanthropies that have specific interests like tech and thinking about how do you add it. So it's really been today, I think, a day of seeing all our interests align with mentoring, right? And what we want to do is continue these conversations over the year so that it doesn't take us just the next year to come back and talk about it. already in the last year, we've seen 3 incredible communities come together. The government of Karnataka, tomorrow will bring 40 of their educators, a whole host of organizations that work with care leavers who are designing a mentoring framework for them, the research that we're doing with Livia that really expanded in the last year. So that community of practice is what we're trying to build, and we invite you to be a part of it in whatever capacity. There's a role for a mentor, a nonprofit, a philanthropist, a researcher. In tomorrow's workshops, if you're interested, ask your Mentor Together team about it. But officially, we will issue a call to join that community of practice, and all it requires is a commitment to evidence-based mentoring, right, through which we will all grow this field together. So thank you so much. Thank you to the panelists as well. I think the fact that there were so many hands shooting up at a 6 p.m. tells us that all the ideas resonated, and I hope that in the years to come, we'll be coming back to report on the results of these, right? That how mentoring has been integrated into TVET in Uttar Pradesh. How is it happening in the Ministry of Labor and Employment? What evidence do we have from India, right? So that's the commitment that we have, and on behalf of Mentor Together, I'd like to thank the panelists. And Livia, actually, can you give them a token of our appreciation? I have told Livia that she's essentially Mentor Together, so at this stage.
I just wanted to, just from the bottom of my heart, thank you and the whole team of Mentor Together for putting together this incredible day, sets of panelists, conversations. I think about mentoring a lot, but coming to this summit is just, it fills my heart to see so many people thinking about the same problem from different angles. And all of this could have not happened without Arundhati and her team. So I think the biggest applause.
So thank you, everyone. This brings us to the end of a very fruitful day of the Mentoring Summit. My sincere thanks to all the speakers for sharing their expertise and insights, and all the attendees for their active participation. We have an interesting line of workshops tomorrow, as you know, and we are really looking forward to having you all join us for the same. Thank you once again, and a very good evening and good night.